and then I'll let our guest speaker introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Mariko Bangerter, and I studied with Philippa years ago. So I'm a qualified nutritionist, but I'm not really focusing on that at the moment. I'm also an EFT, so emotional freedom techniques practitioner and mindset.
Why can't I see your screen?
So I work with, I mainly work with people who have struggles with their confidence or any kind of mental or emotional struggle.
There's a picture of me there.
I know.
So I work with, okay, oh, sorry, I was just looking at a comment. But yeah, so I think what I'll do is I'll start by talking about what EFT is and how it works and how I got into it. So EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques. It's also often known as tapping for short, because it looks like we're just tapping on specific acupressure points on the face and the upper body. So yeah, so it's known as tapping or EFT. And it stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques, and that's because it creates a shift in your emotional state or mental and emotional state. And it was a technique that was created in the States a couple of decades ago. And it's a combination of acupressure point stimulation and talk therapy. And the researcher, she's a psychologist called Dr. Peter Stapleton. She's done quite a lot of research on EFT. And she considers EFT a fourth wave therapy. So in the psychotherapeutic techniques, which began as simple talk therapies, there have been a few iterations of psychotherapy, and she calls EFT probably the most interesting and promising fourth wave therapy. And what makes a fourth wave therapy is that it has a somatic component to it. So it's not just talking, but it uses the body somehow. And that you can achieve quite drastic results in 6 sessions or less. Unlike conventional talk therapy, which you may be needing sessions for, often conventionally months or years. So it's also, EFT is part of a field known as energy psychology, in that we are using the body's energy meridians, much like acupuncture, to a point. So sometimes it's described as acupuncture without the needles, or like acupuncture and psychotherapy, that kind of thing. And it looks very, very simple from the outside. It's simply tapping on specific acupressure points of the face and the upper torso whilst repeating certain affirmations. And so as a tool, it's a really, really interesting tool that anyone can learn and use on themselves daily to manage their stress or manage any kind of uncomfortable emotion or any kind of uncomfortable thought or belief. So as a self-help tool, it's quite a game changer, because it's way more accessible than, say, something like meditation, which is excellent, but often people, when they're really riled up with emotion, they find it difficult to get into a meditative space. And often they will give up on their meditation because they're not able to still or quieten their mind. But the thing about tapping, which is so accessible, I find, is that you're not really trying to still your mind or calm yourself down. You're simply acknowledging what you're feeling or what you're thinking. And in the process of tapping and acknowledging your feelings and repeating certain affirmations, those feelings will naturally dissipate and lose their power. So how does EFT work? They found it's really interesting because they found that what happens when we're tapping is we switch into parasympathetic nervous system mode. So we are able to become much more relaxed in that process. So the amygdala, the part of the brain that controls the stress response, is kind of interrupted. So it works on the, from the various brain scans, it works on the amygdala and the hippocampus. So the amygdala, which controls the stress response, is kind of calmed down, and the hippocampus is activated in a different way. So what happens is we're able to kind of reprogram our thoughts and even behavioral patterns through the process of tapping. And it's like, the way I view it, it's as though as we're tapping, we're able to, because we're able to sort of interrupt the stress response, we're kind of given this window of opportunity to access the subconscious mind. And so because the stress response is dampened, we're able to see things in a less reactive way, a less emotional way, and a more sort of rational way. And because of that, we're then able to kind of shift our perspectives or our beliefs around things that have stressed us out. So it's a really powerful kind of process that happens, and it kind of what's the word? Starts like a whole cascade of chemical, sort of chemical reactions in the body. So it definitely alters our endocrine, or affects our endocrine system. It definitely alters hormonal production. As well as working on the nervous system, it definitely affects the endocrine system. It's really fascinating, and it's kind of one of these things that you need to really experience to believe. So it's an incredible sort of game-changing self-help tool. And on top of that, so when you work with a real practitioner, like, you can go much, much deeper. And so you're able to truly kind of heal from past trauma and things. So as a self-help tool, one that you can learn to use on yourself, it's great at managing your daily sort of stressful triggers, or any kind of uncomfortable feeling, or repeating thought process that's going on, that's inhibiting your progress in the day. So you could use it in the place of, in place of meditation or any kind of other stress busting technique. But when working with a practitioner, you can really go quite deep into healing past trauma, and really changing very, very stubborn, stuck, outdated mental processes and programs. So I've been tapping now for 5 years. I've worked with hundreds of clients, and at the moment I would say I specialize in helping people with anxiety and depression and blocks to their confidence. So in our work together, people get from a state of feeling really anxious and really stuck to developing more and more self-confidence and a deeper sense of self-worth, which a lot of people I find, struggle with this. We're all a work in progress, but so I find that I help people, mainly with confidence, and also issues and problems in their relationships, romantic relationships, but also all sorts of relationships in their lives, in which they're unable to establish healthy boundaries for themselves. So the work that we do together is really kind of a journey in developing more self-confidence, self-love, and self-worth. And so some of the things I've helped people with, for example, let's see, I've helped a woman who wanted to lose weight because she was about to have a mastectomy due to breast cancer, and she really needed to lose weight to get to a healthy enough weight for the surgery. But this woman was very much, well, I would say addicted to alcohol. And she was always the life of the party. She always hosted dinner parties, and she drank quite a lot. And this, I mean, it's not always this fast and effective, but this is just to give an example of how EFT can work. In our first session, we worked on her desire to quit alcohol and quit drinking. And of course, at that stage, she didn't believe it was really possible because she's been drinking for over 30 years, and it was very much a part of her social life. But in that session, we were able to get to the root of why she felt she needed to drink so much, and also why she feared quitting drinking, which it led to an early, one of her early memories of when she was a teenager, in which she overheard her friend, a male friend, talk about her behind her back and say, "Oh, she's not very attractive, but she is the life of the party. She's fun to be around." And hearing those words kind of formed this limiting belief within her that stuck with her through life, that because she's not attractive, she has to be the life of the party. And for her, being the life of the party meant drinking. And so she would host like 2 dinner parties a week, and she would be the one serving all the booze, and she would be the one drinking. So in establishing or in discovering kind of some of these limiting beliefs that she had about herself, bringing her awareness to that and doing all the tapping, we were able to kind of heal, or let's say integrate that memory, that really painful memory of her overhearing this man speak about her, to the point where she was able to let go of that outdated belief that she had to be the life of the party. And I introduced her to some ideas, such as, maybe I could be the life of the party without booze, and maybe I don't need booze to, be the life of the party, and so on. And, she's a very bubbly person anyway. She, like, without booze, she's super bubbly in the daytime when I meet her. So, so we were able to kind of shift her mindset around that through healing that sort of slightly traumatic memory from her childhood, overhearing that conversation. And after that, our first session together, she literally quit alcohol, cold turkey. And that was just before the Christmas season. And it was really impressive that even throughout the Christmas season, she was mostly alcohol free. She was able to treat herself to like 1 glass, a week or something, but there was none of this sort of like addictive behavior that she had struggled with. And she became quite a regular client of mine, and I've helped her with different issues and weight loss as well. And again, it was, I'm just giving you these examples just to see like where these issues stem from, because, I believe that all of you are nutritional therapists. So you get these clients, and sometimes the protocols that you give them are going to be ineffective, or they won't be able to follow them because they're riddled with their own sort of self-sabotaging mechanisms, which come from unresolved issues. And so I feel that it's really important to shift someone's mindset around their limiting beliefs about what they can or cannot achieve in order to just get client compliance, with, and okay, anyway, I digress. I'm just going to go back to that example with this woman. But, another thing that I helped her with was weight loss. And that's because, and I actually had a nutritional consultation with her too, but it didn't really get anywhere because of her limiting beliefs around weight loss. And so even though I had created this plan, this nutritional plan for her to lose weight, she wasn't complying so much. And that was because when we did tapping over it, we realized that her father was, what was it now? He lived through the last World War, and I think he was one of the survivors of a Nazi concentration camp. And so he experienced so much trauma around food and starvation that eventually, when he got his own life back, the way he raised her was to finish everything on her plate and make sure she ate really well. And she and so she grew up with this real pressure around needing to overfeed herself to compensate for the fact that he had survived starvation, right? So in our session, we really worked on that kind of, the trauma of her father and all the sort of beliefs that she had grown up with around food and needing to, eat 3 meals a day and needing to finish everything on her plate, even though she was full, and all these kind of beliefs that she grew up with that weren't her own, but had been passed down to her from her father. And upon sort of integrating all of that experience into consciousness, she was really able to change her mindset and change her limiting beliefs around that. And after that, she really developed a different type of relationship with food. So, that's another example of how EFT was really able to help that.
Amazing case study. But what's also amazing that you managed to pinpoint the alcohol to that one moment in her life. That's really incredible.
Yeah, there is a bit of an art form in that, in like getting to the root cause of something. And I must say that sometimes, it's some sessions are easier than others, and sometimes, often there's this quite an intuitive thing that happens. Like I do rely a lot on intuition, but there are some, this client particularly, I work really well with her, and she's very receptive, and there's this synergy between us. So yeah, it really helps for these moments where where I need a little bit more inspiration. But this is all part of the training. We're as EFT practitioners, we are trained to try to get to the root cause of things. But it's what's fascinating is that throughout the years of doing this, I just realized that like any kind of belief that we hold or any kind of behavioral pattern we hold, you can always pin it back to something. Nothing is just accidental or coincidental. So yeah, I think this is why it's so powerful, this kind of journey of trying to develop more and more self-awareness. This journey of sort of self-awareness and self-development is probably the most profound journey that we can undertake in life. And so I think, before, I kind of strayed away from nutritional therapy, even though, I'm super passionate about nutrition and things. But I think I realized I had a few cases of clients who just, I wasn't getting compliance, and they weren't like, they would come, gung-ho to the session, but then upon giving them the nutritional plan, I was hitting like lots of walls with them. And it's just because there were just too many, unconscious blocks in place to their progress. For example, so that would manifest as self-sabotaging behaviors. So like, let's say even someone's mindset that they cannot possibly lose weight, or when people turn to comfort eating, for example, like, why are they comfort eating? They're comfort eating because in that moment it's like an act of self-soothing. But what are they soothing? There's an underlying emotion there that's uncomfortable that they're trying to soothe. So this is why something like tapping in those moments can be very powerful, because they can soothe themselves in a way that's empowering instead of relying on a crutch, like food.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
appointments actually work now. Would you mind talking through it a little bit?
Yeah. Can you just repeat that, Philippa? Did you say how would appointments work?
Yeah. How do your sessions go? So if anyone was going to like refer clients to you, what would they kind of expect?
Okay. So at the moment, I offer packages of programs. So I don't often do single sessions unless it's very, very specific. So okay, so with tapping, okay, so I offer various programs. So 3-week programs, 6-week programs, and 12-week programs. And the programs that I offer, the one-on-one sort of coaching programs, are single 90-minute sessions, one-on-one via Zoom or in person. I practice from East London. And then they're given sort of a session recap of some of the learnings and some of the things that we've identified, and specific exercises or resources, videos to watch throughout the week between our sessions. And I also give them like tailor-made tapping videos to follow, so that they can tap on themselves throughout that week. So in that 3 or 6 or 12 weeks, they become quite familiar with using tapping on themselves to manage their negative emotional states, or and I also have created 3 different 6-week intensive courses that are taken either individually or in group settings. And I find that the group settings are more powerful because there's this real like kind of bond that's created between the people that attend. And all of the courses are really they're based on different themes. So one of them is called Love the Skin You're In, and that's really about self-confidence and body positivity. Another one is called Magnetize the Life You Want, and it's about gaining clarity on the life, your current life, how balanced it is or not, where you'd like to improve it, and understanding what's stopping you from progressing and gaining or creating the life that you want. And a lot of what's stopping us is past trauma, or trauma is a word that I think a lot of people are scared to use, but trauma doesn't have to imply a really huge dramatic event. And I think we're all dealing with the consequences or the aftermath of trauma throughout childhood, right? But anyway, so a lot of what stops us from progressing in life is unresolved trauma from the past, or unresolved, just unresolved memories, upsetting memories. So then in that program, we use tapping to heal those unresolved trauma, to then and then to create new beliefs about what we can or what we can achieve, and then really design the life that we want and create the steps to gain that life. The third course is called Transform Your Relationship Anxieties, because I work with a lot of people who struggle with developing or creating healthy relationships, mainly romantic, but even relationships at work or healthy friendships. And so this course is really designed to empower people to develop those or create those healthy boundaries and create a whole different mindset on relationships. Okay, so I offer those 3 different courses that have different launch dates throughout the year, and then one-on-one, it's the 3 or 6 or 12 week packages that I offer. And as I said before, although I don't really do single sessions, if it's really specific, I can do single sessions, and single sessions are quite effective if they're specific. So for example, a very specific fear. So whether that's the fear of a future event or a very specific limiting belief. Sometimes as well, I can kind of eradicate in a single session. Or like a very specific phobia. Those, if it's specific, then even one session can sometimes completely transform that. And so they, and I have a leaflet that I can send detailing all the things that I offer.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And what were you saying? So I'm not sure if I should talk about any kind of other angle of this, or
if you have any other case studies that you want to talk about, that'd be really, really good. Yeah.
So and before I do that, maybe I'll just explain, like, because I've thrown in some words, like some terms like limiting beliefs and so on, but I kind of want to talk about the background behind them, because it's kind of a whole different way of looking at things. But basically, in this field of EFT, we say that, well, even in psychology or psychotherapy, they say that most trauma has happened by the time we're 7 years old, and that any other traumatic or experience after that is just a repetition of those initial traumas from the first 7 years of life. Okay, so what I mean by that is that, let's say at the age of 3, it doesn't even have to be, okay, I'll give you okay, so let's say at the age of 3, you have this memory of being in your cot and crying and no one coming to get you. And you're in a dark room and you're just crying your eyes out and no one's coming. And I use this example because actually this is a real example from a client I worked with. So this was kind of one of the pivotal root memories from her current, like present day fear of being abandoned by people. So she had this memory of just crying, and it was a dark room, and her mother's downstairs, but no one's coming to get her. Okay, so what happens is, in these moments of trauma, we form these beliefs, whether that's usually these, as I said before, these initial traumatic situations have happened by the age of 7. So the beliefs that we create are kind of more like visceral or felt beliefs. They don't necessarily follow a set of words. But so her belief that she had created in that moment was that I'm all alone, I'm unsupported, and being alone is scary, and no matter how much I cry, no one's coming to get me. It's kind of like a feeling of I'm helpless, that kind of thing. And it's a really interesting thing, because these beliefs in those moments at that age, as I said, are not formed in these perfect sentences, but it's kind of more of a notion, like a felt, visceral feeling that's mixed with a certain idea, a certain belief, and a certain sensations. And whenever we experience any kind of trauma, we experience corresponding sensations in the body. So it may well present itself as, you know, a tightening in the chest, or a knot in the stomach, or you know, a quickening of your heart, or whatever it is. So what happens is, throughout life, when we then experience a similar kind of situation that has a few parallels, those same sensations flood our systems. And that empowers or intensifies or reinforces those initial limiting beliefs that we created in that initial trauma. So I'm helpless, I'm alone, I'm unsupported, I'm abandoned, whatever it is. So these limiting beliefs that we formed after the first trauma get reinforced and reinforced and reinforced throughout life. And sometimes, or often, they become so reinforced that we don't even realize their beliefs. We view them as truths. So, and the brain loves to find patterns, right? And we have this thing called confirmational bias, where we're just looking for our beliefs to be confirmed. So this is why it's really important to become aware of the beliefs that are limiting us, and understand their beliefs. They're not facts. And then also become aware of where they may stem from, why we created them. And there's always going to be a host of situations or experiences in your past that gave rise to and reinforced those beliefs. So in our field, like, we would say that a belief is like the top of a table, and it's upheld by the table legs. And those table legs are the different experiences in your life that propped up that belief. So if you can go back to those different memories and heal them, and the word heal is quite, like a vague and like, a kind of gray area word, which we can talk about later. But once you can heal or resolve that traumatic memory, like all the major ones, then that belief will collapse. So this is why in my work with people, I try to, it's always about kind of going backwards and healing past trauma, because in so doing, we can then, that's what allows their beliefs that are limiting their present day life to be transformed and shifted. Okay, so case studies. Okay, so I'll give you another
question. So
yeah.
Your first session with someone, is it more like a counselling session then? Really, like kind of trying to get some information out of someone?
I would say so. I would say half of it is a bit like a counseling session, and it's kind of understanding where their kind of blocks are, what they're struggling with in life. And but then the second half is already, we're going to start tapping and start to change things around and shift things.
Okay.
Yeah. And if anyone's interested, I have a few 10-minute IGTV tapping videos that you can tap along to, just to get an idea of how it works in the sort of self-help type context. So those types of videos, as I said earlier, 10 minutes of tapping on yourself can really change your state. Sometimes it might take a bit more, it might take 15-20 minutes. Sometimes it could take less, like 5 minutes. But I'll give you an example. I remember years ago, I was studying, and there was a girl who was, we had just taken a test, and there was a girl who got 100% on this test, and she was kind of quite boastful about it, and no one else did that well, actually. So she was quite boastful, and it really irritated me, to the point where I was just quite irritable the whole day because of her constant gloating. And I went home, and the first thing I did was I tapped on myself. So I tapped on my irritation. I tapped on, my frustration that she was so boastful, and like no one else did that well, and I just found it quite rude. And within 3 minutes of tapping on myself, I started crying. And I just felt this surge of compassion for this girl who, it's like, you know, I had this compassion for this girl who was boasting because I realized she was here in London all alone. She didn't have any family. She didn't have much that she was very positive about or in her life. And so she just wanted to share that to you know, to get a bit of, yeah, positive affirmation and validation from other people. But it was just, it really amazed me how quickly it worked. 3 minutes of tapping on myself. And, you know, as I said before, because we're interrupting the stress response, we're able to kind of see things in a more objective way. So within that 3 minutes, I got a much like more objective and wiser perspective of the situation. And I also think there's something quite profound about tapping in that it really seems to connect you with a very wise part of yourself, you know. Yeah, it's just, it kind of takes you away from your individual sort of ego, and it kind of gives you a much more profound, yeah, perspective of things. So yeah, so as I said, I was tapping. I had all these like sort of revelations about this girl, and all I felt, instead of irritation and frustration and anger even, was just compassion for her and acceptance for her. And so, you know, yeah, this is how powerful this technique is. And when you first start tapping on yourself and practicing on yourself, you're just a bit like, this feels so random and arbitrary, and why am I tapping on these points and saying these things? And yeah, it does feel a bit weird. But I think there's many levels at which this is working. And in different studies, they've tried tapping on random points on the body, and it doesn't work. And they've tried doing just affirmations, and that doesn't work either. So there's this combination of tapping on the acupressure points and specific affirmations done in a kind of set way that makes it work. But, you know, this also doesn't surprise me too much, because I trained in mindfulness meditation, and it's kind of a similar process in that when you try and suppress a feeling or a thought, it's always going to be there. It's like you're trying to sweep something under the rug, and that's always going to be there. It's only when you truly face something and acknowledge it that you dissolve its power. It's in the sort of accepting and the acknowledgement of it that it loses its power. So and you know, meditation kind of works in that way, where, you know, if you sit and you kind of resist all your thoughts that are naturally occurring in your mind, it's just going to get worse. But if you acknowledge every thought and you're like, okay, I just had a thought there, but I'm going to go back to my breath, then that thought will disappear. So it's that process that we're trying to practice. But tapping, I find, is kind of easier, and kind of the results can be way more effective. And you feel the results as they're taking place. So yeah, so I have a few videos on my IGTV that you can practice, including one for if you're struggling to sleep because of thoughts that are, you know, going on and on in your mind. I've had some positive feedback on that, like saying, yeah, I tried tapping along with your video and I fell asleep during the video. So, okay, I might give you some other kind of case studies just to show you kind of what are the contexts that it works in.
Sorry, I do have, someone has just asked a quick question.
Yeah.
Where did you get trained? Because they're interested in studying it.
Okay, so there's quite a few different iterations of EFT now. Including like matrix. Well, yeah, there's so many, and you don't need to know that. But what I would say is the most important is that you get accredited with EFTI, which stands for EFT International, and they have a really good curriculum. I can't remember. Yeah, it's just very thorough in their teaching, and yeah, that's also the accreditation I have, EFTI. And they have different centers all over the world and all over the country, but it's a set curriculum. And there's going to be, I think it's 100 hours of 100 hours of practice and 4 case studies that you have to do to be accredited. So that's definitely what I would recommend. And it's I think all in all, it's like 4 full day training, but then it's mentoring. You get mentored, and throughout your case study period and your practice hours. And does anyone have any other questions at this point?
Not at the moment, but please put them on the chat. I don't mind reading them out if you prefer to keep quiet. But I'll let you know if there's any more.
Oh yeah, I'm a psychologist and I'm very interested. Yeah, because it's funny because I've met a lot of psychologists actually who then got trained in EFT, and it's a really good supplement to their practice. So like other fourth wave therapies, tapping has a lot of similar components to hypnotherapy, I would say, and also maybe EMDR. So EMDR stands for eye movement eye movement desensitization and reprogramming. Is that correct? If anyone can correct me. But it uses kind of different ways of moving the eyes to engage different parts of the brain, and it also helps to kind of, again, rewire the brain to be able to shift unresolved trauma or reprogram the mind and any kind of beliefs that you hold. So kind of similar to tapping, but just a different format. There's a lot of these new techniques that are coming out. Another one that's very fascinating is called Psych K. So if any of you follow people like Bruce Lipton or Joe Dispenza, I mean, Bruce Lipton was it's a really fascinating chap who does a lot of research and work around beliefs and changing your mind, and the power of thoughts and so on. That thoughts can really change your mind and your life and everything. Just how powerful thoughts are, and the placebo effect and all that. And he talks a lot about Psych K, EFT, and EMDR as being very powerful tools to help do this. So I think we're living in really interesting times, because we're seeing that change, like huge changes in someone's psyche, can take much less time than we previously had thought. And I think EMDR is also really, really fascinating. And there's some EMDR techniques that we kind of got introduced to with EFT, but just very surface level. That is something that I'd be interested in learning more about. So some more case studies. What else have I helped with? A lot of the clients that I work with, it's quite a profound journey that we embark on together. So whilst some sessions are very pragmatic and sort of problem solving in a sort of practical way, a lot of them are kind of these longer journeys of really building confidence. And depending on the person, that can really be a long process. So I currently have a client who I've been working with for a couple of months, and she basically grew up with parents who were she's seen a psychotherapist, so she has seen that, or she now knows that her parents, one of them has borderline personality disorder and the other has narcissistic personality disorder, and she really grew up with many, many years of verbal and psychological abuse from her parents. And so she really doesn't like herself very much. And in our first session, she was not able to even say the words out loud, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And I find that when I'm starting to work with people, this is often the case. In our first session, they really struggle saying that, or they'll say it out loud, but there's tremendous resistance to saying these words. And that's because they've struggled to like themselves, or accept themselves for many years, because they've been taught or told by the people around them that they are, worthless. And so a lot of the work that I do with people is really just step by step, going back to past trauma and healing that, and just layer by layer, they're able to develop a bit more self-confidence, a bit more self-acceptance, day by day. And sometimes it's a very, very long process, because this is years of their upbringing, so yeah, sometimes often the work is like that, but the examples of how the therapy is working can be seen in really visible ways in their life. Like, for example, one of my clients really struggled having healthy boundaries at work, especially. But after a few sessions working together, she was able to really stand up to her colleagues who used to kind of take advantage of her, and which resulted in her overworking and undersleeping and so on. So she was able to actually stand up for herself and talk to them and express her needs, and express also the context in which she didn't want to do certain things. And that was really a first for her. Being 34 years old, it was really the first time she was able to develop the confidence to speak back. And after doing that, she got involved in one project where she was able to express her needs a few times, and she was given much more space and time to work on her deadlines. And then eventually she found that she still wasn't very happy or enjoying this project, and so she quit the project. And this is something she never would have done before. So that's one kind of example. Let me think of more specific case studies as well. Let's have a look. Gosh, my mind's going blank because it's like so vast. Okay.
That is incredible. That last case study is just, they're so complicated as well. It doesn't seem like anyone's a particularly easy case.
Okay, so I'll give you a really specific example. Okay, and this was pretty interesting to see. Okay, so I had a client who came to see me because she struggled with clenching her teeth at night, to the point where every single morning she'd wake up with tremendous jaw ache. She was taking supplements. She was taking, quite high doses of magnesium before bed. Her diet was pretty good. She had seen a doctor, and she was getting to the point where she was grinding her teeth. So her dentist was really saying, yeah, this is really becoming problematic. You really need to work on this. But she didn't know what to do. Like, she had seen, all these people and nothing was working. Okay, so in the session, we quickly found out that clearly this is where she holds her tension and her stress. And we understood that she was not able to allow herself to relax. So she didn't incorporate rest into her daily routine at all, right? And so she felt it's not safe for me to relax. That was one of her limiting beliefs. It's not safe for me to relax. Why? Because if I relax, I'll fall behind and I won't succeed. Okay. And that extended to nighttime, where at night she could not allow herself to relax into sleep because she felt she had to worry about all these things and so on. So we traced that back to a memory of when she was probably about 7, in which her mother said to her, you're not naturally talented, so you're going to have to work twice as hard as everyone else. So, so that's like another classic example of a classic set of limiting beliefs that she had formed in that moment because of, like, a somewhat traumatic experience of her mother saying that to her. So from that moment on, she really felt she had to try super hard at school and everything, and that really continued all throughout her life. So we kind of went back to that memory and tried to integrate it and changed her mindset around the fact that actually contradictorily to that, if the more she relaxes, the better she'll be able to perform, and the more success she'll probably have, right? The better she'll be able to sleep, the better she'll be able to recoup, and so we were able to shift that around. And that night was the first night in months that she didn't clench her teeth, and the next day she didn't wake up with jaw pain. So that was a really nice kind of session, a really productive one.
Great success story as well, isn't it?
That was really that was great. In relation to that, and this work can be so convoluted sometimes. It's kind of like you're getting like a bit of an insight into the labyrinth of someone's mind, and so there's a lot to untangle sometimes, and so as I said, it's not always that effective, right? But but so sometimes it's surprisingly effective. And in relation to that, the same client had this fear of silences in conversation, because again, because of what her mother said, she felt she wasn't interesting enough, so therefore she had to fill every conversation with words, and that if a conversation fell silent, it would mean she's not interesting enough. So so that led to, it's interesting because we found out that led to her smoking, because the cigarette breaks from these awkward social situations allowed her to escape the uncomfortableness of the silences. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's also convoluted. So it's incredible, really, when you look at it, like how much these situations, often from our childhoods, often from our primary caregivers, our parents, how they may be saying something to, because they think it's in our best interest, but how negatively can affect us. But but it's all like two sides of the same coin. So the same thing that made her very driven and ambitious and work really hard throughout school also has that flip side of not allowing her to rest. But there's definitely a good side to that coin too, and we wouldn't be who we are without these programs and behavioral patterns and so on. So it's not to say it's all doom and gloom, but it's this whole thing of like, what allowed us to survive in one point of our lives may not be something that will allow us to thrive in this current stage in life. So therefore, becoming aware of what sort of limiting beliefs are limiting us, are hindering our progress, is very, very empowering. So
that's an amazing point to kind of end with. That's just, I think that was quite good to point out as well.
Like I worked with someone who at the age of 26 was headhunted by Kanye West to be on his design team, and it's the same with her. She what allowed her to thrive was also causing her anxiety. What allowed her to become so driven and successful also made her very anxious. And we're just all these okay. So
question about that story.
How long did it take you to get to that memory link to what her mother said? That was about 20 minutes in that session. it took 20 minutes. But as I said, some people I work quite fast with. I can't explain it. There's this synergy. Yeah. And then how many sessions before you usually feel you make progress? It really depends. So I would say I'm quite specialized now in anxiety, and yeah, kind of depression, anxiety, low self-confidence, that kind of thing. So I feel like that's where I'm best at. Whereas, you know, there are people who specialize in addictions, for example, with tapping, you know, and I would say I don't specialize in addictions, because I perhaps because I'm not as interested in that. So with anxiety, I'm quite efficient with that, or yeah, my work's quite effective. Like I've worked with people who are so anxious that they can't get out of bed. And I would say after one session, like that's not an issue anymore. They can get out of bed and they can start a routine. So yeah, one or two for anxiety and that kind of thing. Yeah, already 1 session, 2 sessions, 3 sessions. In 3 sessions, I can make quite a lot of progress. Yeah. And some people just a single session, but some people, you know, I have a client at the moment and it's quite a struggle. I've been working with her for 2 months now, and it's quite a struggle, but at the same time, she's been through so much. So, you know, like, what do you expect? I still feel as though EFT is more effective than CBT. It gets faster results. So who knows how long it would have taken her with a different form of therapy. In fact, she has tried different forms of therapy, and she came to me because she didn't feel that they worked. So yeah, I think there's something about the somatic element of these fourth wave therapies that makes things faster. Why? Because you cannot separate the mind from the body. You know, just in the same way as when something stressful happens, you feel it in your body just as much as you feel it in your mind, or you think about things in your mind. You know, anxiety is such a physiological response. The tightening of the chest, you know, the quickening of your breath, and so on. So the premise behind EFT is that with every negative emotion, there's a blockage in the body's energy system, or yeah. And so the tapping helps to unblock these energetic blocks. And, you know, there was a very interesting podcast. I don't know if you're familiar with Rupert Sheldrake at all. He's a really interesting, scientist, biologist, who is very much involved or interested in consciousness and collective consciousness, and he really developed this theory of morphogenetic fields and this concept that knowledge, memory, is stored not in any part of the brain necessarily, but in a field that surrounds an individual or a group of individuals. So he's done a lot of interesting experiments with lab rats and their ability to learn a new trick, and how, according to his theory suggests that with every generation, they would be able to learn this trick faster because it's part of this field, this field of information that they can tap into. And this experiment has been replicated in multiple universities all over the world, and it's shown to be correct that with every generation they learn a new trick faster, even if they're not genetically linked to the generation before. So it's just generation of rats in different parts of the world and so on. It's absolutely fascinating. And so my point being that, like, who knows what, you know, there's so many unknowns still in science, right? Like, what is, and it, like, do, you know, the meridian system that the Chinese have been talking about for millennia, and Eastern philosophies like, you know, the Vedic traditions have known about, and the chakras and so forth. You know, I think the West are going to start to see this more and more, that they do exist, and that, yeah, a lot of our health relies on these energy channels and meridians and so on. In fact, I was at this lecture a couple of years ago, and there was this Korean university who developed this imaging technique where they saw in a fetus developing in the womb, it captured these images of the meridians before anything physical was developing. It first captured these what looked like veins, but they were the meridian channels, the energy channels in a developing fetus. And what happened was this this study got co-opted, and they started calling these channels the premovascular system, because they couldn't say what they actually were. It wasn't a vascular system, it was energy. They weren't physical. They were non-physical. So it's incredible. So I really think that we're going to start to see more and more of this, and there's going to be more and more talk of energy and consciousness and these intangible things that relate very directly to our health and well-being. So yeah,
no, I totally agree. It's so interesting. It's really interesting. Well, I don't know if you want to wrap it up now, or see if anyone else has got any more questions.
Yeah, I'm open to any questions if anyone has any. And if not, we can wrap it up.
Yeah, well, if you could send all the links to the videos and your flyer, that would be really, really good.
Sure.
Yeah, that'd be really good, because I think everyone kind of often recommends meditation and things like that, and often, you're so true, people find it so hard to do. So it's great to just have this clear other option there, especially with knowing an expert that can actually help them through it as well.
And I often over lockdown last time, I did these donation-based group sessions for anyone struggling with anxiety and stuff, that anyone can just drop in and join on Zoom. So I often talk about these things on Instagram, so I can leave you all my details, but if Philippa, if you have people's email addresses, maybe I can send links or send files over.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or I could just send them over to you and you can distribute.
Yeah, well, we can do both, then you can connect with everyone.
Okay, sure.
And then I can put it on the Facebook group.
Okay, perfect. So maybe I'll just, in the chat box, I'll just write my email address for now.
Brilliant.
And my Insta is... So my business name is Mindsetting with Mariko. I'm just gonna write that now. There we go. Oh, no, that's no spelling mistake. Okay. So thanks everyone for listening, and thank you, Philippa, for organizing and inviting.
No, thank you. It was absolutely fascinating. Enjoyed every second. Thank you very much. And I'll send your details out in a sec.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Sweet to see you. Bye.